Hey everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill, welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to prove that you can create a beautiful layered textured background, and it's super easy. And I don't make promises I can't keep. So we are going to actually start with scrapbook paper that I maximize the use of. And you can watch this video on my YouTube channel if you want to look at more ways to use your scrapbook pads. So after harvesting focal images, I had little bits of paper. Some of them I ripped and I was going to put them on, and then I decided I'm just going to cut them into rectangular square shapes and glue that on the background. Now, while I kind of used the colors that were there on mine, they don't have to be. Any scrapbook paper that you have, save it from the landfill, glue it down, and it is going to give you texture and pattern that you can use on an art journal page or a mixed media project. So if you got scrapbook paper, pad scraps, here's where you can use them. So after I've cut out some, I've decided that I'm going to put this all over. Some I've layered up, some I've just placed in different angles. At this point, I am simply gluing it down, saving it from being in the garbage can and going to the landfill. And I had no plan of where this went. In fact, this art journal page, 7x10 mixed media page, sat in my stash for a couple months before I take it and finish it up. So you can do this when you have the scraps or when you're not feeling particularly inspired, just get it done and it's ready to go. FYI, the art journal page or the mixed media page was gessoed before that. So I drag it out 2 months later, and now I'm going to add some more interesting layers. Now, this is tissue paper from Ciao Bella. You get a lot. It has this kind of sepia kind of tone with this floral, very subtle floral pattern, and you can use it as is. But I thought, hey, why not bump this up a little bit? And I'm stamping with archival ink because it's permanent, some script. I'm just adding another layer of detail, and I'm doing it now instead of later because this is going to end up being more random. And I'm just doing a couple sections of this tissue paper, saving a lot of this. Now, this tissue paper is thicker than the tissue paper you would buy at the dollar store, but it decoupages down really well and it's very strong. You can move it around and everything. So there's lots of possibilities with it. Not thinking vintage at this point in time. I'm thinking my page is going to go vintage. So there is the page. Now I'm ripping this randomly. See how that script, we're just getting little bits of script. So some of this layer shows up at the end, but it's very subtle. It's kind of peeking through some of the layers in an unexpected way. And again, there is no idea here of focal image or colors. All I was thinking was vintage. So once I had a few down there, I'm grabbing my fluid matte medium and gluing it down. Now this paper with the sepia brownish tones in it, it goes somewhat translucent, which is the right word? I'm not sure. You can see a little bit through it, but not a lot. But I've got very soft colors. So if the colors underneath were bigger and bolder, you probably would see more of it. So I'm just gluing that down and I'm liking, I've got a little bit of script there. It's ripped. It's looking a little bit more vintage. Now, if you don't have the Ciao Bella tissue paper, and you can look into that. I got it from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. You can take your own tissue paper, do some stamping or stenciling on it, and make your own DIY. And if I remember, I will link the video where I show you how to do that. Now, here's where the magic starts to happen. I am using gesso and I'm softening the edges. I'm muting the edges, covering some areas, giving it that cloud-like. And I call this magic because it just brings everything together. It pushes everything back, makes you think of it more as a background or the beginnings of a background than with it just ripped and put down. And yes, I am covering some of what's there, but it's not my end goal. My end goal is to have an interesting background. So I am using green, and I can't think of the green there. It's kind of a blue, a couple blue greens, turquoise in here with the gesso. Now, I didn't dry the gesso. I'm putting this wet on wet, mixing those colors. So I'm getting lots of tints because I'm lightening it a little bit. I'm loving the look of this, thinking, okay, the blue, it's not, we're kind of moving away from my vintage idea. So I grabbed my Naples yellow. I'm thinking, okay, yellow might go well here. So I'm taking that again, nothing's dry. So it's kind of mixing. And when the blues and the greens mix with the yellow, you get other tones and shades of colors. And that's what's making for the interesting background. I'm liking the yellow against the blue green. And of course, those are across the color wheel from each other. So color theory tells us that this is going to work. Some color, some of the blue is or turquoise is a little deeper than others. And I like that. I want lights and darks. That's what makes for an interesting background, along with that little bit of script and that little bit of flower from the tissue paper. And then we have the texture of the scrapbook. Now you can see with the color that I put on there, that scrapbook paper could have been any color. Basically, I muted it out. It isn't a problem. Now, I liked what was happening here, but it seemed to lack a little oomph. I needed a little contrast. So I grabbed my Prussian blue, which is like a dark navy with a green tone to it. Goes really well with turquoise. And I start adding that. And I'm liking the darkness. In fact, I want more dark. So I'm using a little bit more, putting it on a little bit thicker, doing a couple layers. Now, again, I did not stop here and dry it in between because I like what happens when you mix it wet and wet. It just gives, you get that very cloud-like feel. Now, at this point, it's like, this is not vintage anymore. Thought I was going there, but I'm going to pivot. I'm going to, change my plan and go in a different direction. And sometimes that happens when you're doing a page. Just go with it. I do love what I see. That adding that Prussian blue was such the answer. Now, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking peacock colors. So I remember that I have a peacock feather stamp and I'm taking white paint using a brayer, brayering on a nice even coat of white, and then I'm going to stamp with white. I wanted it to be subtle. I wanted to lighten it up. And hopefully, as I keep going, you can see the subtle peacock feather background that I have. It's not, I could have used black, but that would have been stronger. It would have been more visible and it would have given a different effect. So if you have a peacock stencil, a peacock stamp, something along that line, or any stamp that you want, it could be a flower stamp. Remember, I'm showing you steps and techniques. Use the materials you have. They don't have to be exactly what I have before you can create something similar. You could use different colors, your favorite colors. So I keep stamping, moving along here, and absolutely loving what I'm seeing. Not where I thought I'd be going, but hey, I'm enjoying the process. Creating interesting, layered backgrounds is one of the joys of art journaling for me. And there is it in all its glory. Yummy. So before we go on, here's a bit of a tip. Now, when you stamp with acrylic paint, it is really key that you wash your stamps right away. I have sprayed this with my Murphy's Oil soap. It's Murphy's Oil soap, a little bit of dish soap and water, and I use a rag to wipe it up. If there's bits that are inside the stamp, use a stencil brush or a toothbrush to get all that paint out. Then you don't have to worry about ruining your stamps. Now there it is. Now we can still see the scrapbook paper. It's textured. I can choose to bring it out later if I want. When I went through my focal image, I found this frond, which is from a stencil that I cut with my silhouette, and this little girl that was stamped. So I thought, you know what, we'll combine it. It kind of looks like it's her peacock tail. So I'm playing off of that peacock stamp that I had. If you did flowers in the background, maybe you're going to have a flower focal image. But really, a butterfly, a flower, an angel, a fairy, pretty much anything goes. I'm just adding, using what I had in my stash, what was lying around close at hand. So I positioned it a little bit to the right, a little off center, because I think that looks always better. And then I'm gluing this down with my fluid mat meeting again. Medium. Layering it up. It looks like she's got a little bit of a peacock feather. I like the darkness of the peacock feather. That really stands out against the background. I'm giving it a good coat of the uh, fluid medium on top because now I'm going to overpaint. And I'm using some Naples yellow tying into the back for her hair. And then I decide that I'm going to give her color the skin tone. I just have some old craft paint that's in a skin tone, and I tend to use it. You only need one tube, and you can change the tint and tone if you wish. Now, you can use markers. If that's the way you roll. I think after 30 years of teaching, I was done with coloring. I prefer painting with acrylic paint. But you can use pit markers here. You can use whatever color markers you have. I like acrylic paint because it's permanent. Then I decide I like that frond. It's so dark. I'm going to paint the flower motif that's on this stamped image. And I'm painting it the Prussian blue, tying in again with the Prussian blue in the background. I'm working to make my focal image stand out a little bit more. Right now, it's kind of fading into the background. Goal is always to get your focal image to be front and center. So I'm just using a small round brush, nothing fancy. I don't buy expensive brushes at all. I'm going to do that. And then before I do the ones that are on her dress, I decide to paint out the dress. I decide I'm going to keep the dress white. Wasn't sure if I was going to paint it yellow or white, and I just went with white. But again, I did the hair, the skin, the little flowers in blue because I knew that, okay, I made those decisions. And then I push back the decisions that I am not sure of till later. Because usually once you do one thing, it leads to the next decision. And I like the contrast of that dark Prussian blue with the white. So I'm just putting that on. Now you say, well, the copy paper was white, so why paint it? It just looks now like it's painted as opposed to just paper glued down. It's a little bit more opaque. And then I'm coming in with my little round brush and painting the flowers that were in that stamped image. Painting her shoes the same Prussian blue color. And hopefully you can see that the focal image now stands out a little bit more than it did before I started adding any of the detailing in. But I'm not done. There's a few finishing steps that are going to happen here. And here's one. I am shading using my angle brush, shading around. I've got the Prussian blue on here, although I do come back and do black, but I don't think I got that on camera. This just frames the picture. It's part of my finishing process 99% of the time. Actually, 99.9%. And I'm using an angle brush. And earlier I said I don't spend a lot of money on brushes, but I do spend a little bit more on a good angle brush. Nothing that's too terribly long. These ones I think I got from Michael's. Just works better. So now I'm doing the shading with the Prussian blue around the girl, and that's making her stand out from the background. Remember, the goal is to get your focal image the most forward. So I'm just going around giving a little bit of shading, and I'm using Prussian blue. You can use black. Most times I do, but I thought black was going to be a little too stark. And I shade around here, and in doing this, there was kind of a white border that when I cut it out, and I regretted that. I regretted getting rid of it because it made it stand out better. I liked the look of it. Now I'm shading around the white dress. There's details that were there, lines that were there, and I'm just following the lines that were already on the stamped image. I'm not creating anything new. And it's just making the dress a little less white. So here, since I missed this white, I regretted painting it out. I grabbed my fine line applicator bottle and I'm doing a line of white paint all the way around it. And that's just making that frond stand out. Sometimes we make the wrong decision or we regret what we did, but there's always a workaround. There's always a way to fix it. And that's one of the reasons I like mixed media and art journaling, because it's kind of like problem solving. You go and you do one thing and then it's like, oh, well, now what? How do I solve this problem? Or how do I fix this? Or, oh, that didn't work. Don't panic. Sometimes table it, walk away, come back with an answer. Then I decide I'm going to dot the middle of these flowers, add a detail that really wasn't there, but it kind of ties it all together. Loving the way it looks. So if you got scrapbook papers that you're not using or little bits because you've taken off other things, here's a way to use them. Take them, rip them, glue them down on paper, cut them into shapes, put them down on paper. Don't let it go to the recycle bin. So this sentiment comes from my Sassy Saying sentiment pack. And when you get the sentiment pack, there are a couple fonts. I don't think this is one. I think I've gone in and altered it after I've published that pack. But you can go to NINNYSNAPKINS.com and look at the sentiments and see, are they fonts that you like? The Sassy Sayings kind of is a good all-purpose one. And this one says, people will stare. Make it worth their while. And I'm just cutting off some of the white. The benefit of the digital sentiment packs is you can shrink them with your computer settings or your printer settings, or you could blow them up and make them bigger. So you can make them fit the art journal page or mixed media piece that you are doing. I can shrink it down if I was doing this on a 4x4 magnet, or I could blow it up if I was doing a 9x12 page and not a 7x10 page. And you can't do that with physical stamps. So now I'm just playing with where I want this to go. And I decide I'm going to put some on the left side and then on the right side. And that makes your eye go across the page. And that's a trick, with what you kind of show the viewer where to go. So I'm gluing that down with Fluid Matte Medium. And once that's dry, I'm going to dot the eyes. I grabbed my fine line applicator bottle. I could have grabbed a marker, a pit pan here, but thought I'd grab that. That was handy, my fine line applicator bottle. Now, remember that scrapbook pages or pieces? I decided that I wanted to bring it out. So what I have in my hand is not a watercolor pencil. It is a Inktense pencil. It is ink, not watercolor, but it's activated just like watercolor, but it's permanent once it's dry. And I like things that are permanent. Now, when you go and you look and check out the Inktense, there's blocks and there's pencils, and I have both. You can buy the pencils separately in an art store, and I've seen them on Amazon. And I would buy like a dark blue, a black, a brown to use for this because then it's permanent. So any of the shading, instead of using a Stabilo all pencil or a charcoal pencil, which if you put wet medium on top afterwards, they will smudge. So anything you varnish is going to smear. This will not smear if I varnish this. I don't varnish my art journal pages. I do if it was a mixed media piece or canvas. So I'm just going around. Now you can choose to do all the shapes or some of the shapes selectively. I just kind of start and I'm playing it by ear. And I'm bringing out those shapes. It's adding that extra detail, dimension, interest in the background. It doesn't cover up the peacock feather or the beautiful script that we have or any of that. It just kind of enhances it and gives it another layer. And again, my Inktense pencil, this was like a dark navy blue. I can't remember the name of it. You could have done the same with the blocks. If I was buying them, I'm buying a set, I would buy the blocks before the pencils. Works better for me. But I have both, so I get to use both. Then I grab my Sakura glaze pen in black, and I'm just outlining the sentiment to make it stand out just a little bit more. So from using scraps that would otherwise be in the recycle bin and, trying out some new techniques, going with the flow, the art journal page is done. I really like how it turned out. Let me know what you think. Until next time, go get creative.